Hello and welcome to the Auto Guide Show. This week, Kyle drives a whole bunch of Toyotas and I do some real off-roading. But before we get to that, a word from our sponsor. eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. All right, so kicking things off is probably not the most exciting car either of us drove this week, but probably the most important, and that is the refreshed Corolla Cross Hybrid. Or just Corolla Cross in general, I guess.
Just Corolla Cross, yeah. I did drive both, and I drove them at a racetrack. I did not drive them on the track.
Did you take the Supra off-road after?
I did, yeah, and now Toyota won't answer my calls. I don't know what's wrong. So I drove the 2026 Corolla Cross. It was interesting because the only all-wheel drive ones there were the hybrid. We did not get to drive the all-wheel drive gas model. It was a front drive. It was, it's a pretty minor refresh, especially in the case of the gas model. It looks more or less the same as before. There are some tweaks to the styling, but the interior sees more tech and a redesigned center console, which was something that we criticized a lot before because it felt very low rent in that category. And so now it feels a little more premium. The hybrid is still, in my mind, the way to go because you're getting 42 miles per gallon combined. And that is a number that I was easily able to match in the hilly areas around Sonoma. So it's still got the same drawbacks that you would say for the Corolla Cross since it's launched a few years ago. The back seat's a little tight, storage space is only okay, but pricing is now higher. So this is not a cheap vehicle. But again, in my mind, if you're buying something in this category, I imagine you care about value, and the fuel economy advantages with the hybrid just make it such an obvious choice for me. Whereas the gas model, you and I have both driven the gas, and it's gutless. It's not fun to drive in any way, whereas the hybrid actually feels a little more refined and powerful. So it's a win.
Yeah, and the suspension feels better. Maybe that extra weight. So quickly before we move on, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the tweaks to the front, it's more in line with Toyota's sort of hybrid EV styling as opposed to how it used to look like a bit of a baby RAV4.
Yes, now it has the cheese grater lower bumper, which is what we saw on the Crown Signia. I think it looks pretty good. I really like Cavalry Blue. And then the funny little fact that we all noticed with the gas models, they're all Soul Red. They're Mazda Red. And it's because this is built at the joint facility with Mazda. So they share a paint shop. So you can get Soul Red on a Corolla Cross, and you can get Toyota's Cypress, which is a nice medium darkness green. You can get that on the CX-50.
That's good. Soul Red, everything.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, this isn't a review, but some other huge news. The 2026 Sentra, which you and I have talked about before, maybe their only sedan going forward, was unveiled. And you have always championed even the old one, that it was one of the better looking vehicles in the segment. And I don't think much has changed. This has the more squinty-eyed corporate look that the Murano kind of debuted. But in the SR with the two-tone roof and the blacked out front, it really works.
Yeah. It's taken me a few days to get used to the amount of black trim on the front of the SR, because it's basically the whole front bumper if you're looking at it from dead on. But it's fascinating because none of the body panels are shared with the existing model. So it's the same platform, but it looks substantially different. And the interior is a huge upgrade. And that was one of our big criticisms of this car when we did the mega comparison. It placed last, and we said it just needs some tweaks and it would be competitive. Surprise, surprise, there are tweaks, although not to the powertrain.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's too bad the 2 liter's the only one. It would have been nice to have even the Rogue's 3-cylinder turbo as a upgrade option or something because if in the SR especially. But the other nice thing is if you get the non-SR, especially the whatever their top line is going to be, with the new look and without the two-tone, it looks like a completely different car and it looks contemporarily good. Like it's not kind
Hmm.
of a little too far out there like the K4, but it looks modern. So I'll get to drive this in a couple weeks, and I'm really looking forward to see what it's like.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you think.
And back to Kyle driving, uh, much like the Corolla Cross, you got to drive the GR Corolla. I mean, they're both Corollas, right?
Yeah, it's essentially the same car. We did joke there that the GR Corolla powertrain and a Corolla Cross would actually be kind of awesome. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
it's like you've always been saying, like just put the WRX powertrain in the Crosstrek, just do it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
same idea. So yeah, it's the 26 GR Corolla. It is not the Grimmin, the GRMN, the one that we all
Yeah.
suspect, and they've been teasing with camo. It's not that. So it is fairly minor updates this year. It's more focused on long-term reliability. So Toyota wanted to take this to the Nürburgring. What did that mean? Adding a lot more adhesive to the chassis for better vertical load stiffness. They also added an additional cold air intake. So it's just about it performing at longer periods of time. Otherwise, it's basically the same car, and we love the GR Corolla. It's
Does it
so much
sound like
fun.
the Trail Hunter after its intake?
Can you imagine? That would be great. No, it's still just a ton of fun. And Toyota did a really fascinating thing on this drive program. We're at Sonoma Raceway, which is a awesome track, and they put us in a very specific sequence of cars with the Supra, the GR86, and the Corolla. But for the Corolla, it was drive the 2023, then drive the 24 with its updates, then drive the 26, which of course rolls in the more substantial updates from 25, the increased torque and stuff. And so a lot of journalists, we've regularly said, right, like when there's minor changes to a performance car, it's like, oh, you need a track to feel the difference. Well, we had a track to feel the difference. And yes, there are actually changes. This is just a little more planted without feeling boring. It's not understeery, it's just it feels more sure of itself going into a corner, and that gives you more confidence to get on the power early to get out of the corner. So I was noticing my cornering speeds were higher in the newer car. Uh, it's it's still good. It's still pricey. You're now talking Golf R money for the higher of the two trims, which is a tough sell when the interior of the GR is still a basic Corolla one. But it's so fun.
Must be all that extra glue
Yeah, it's pricey
holding
glue.
it together.
Yeah.
Holding it together.
Oh man.
So moving on to something I drove. I spent some of the week up north, not northern Ontario, central Ontario, but north of where we are. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was with a Jeep, and it was to go off-roading. And by off-roading, I mean we went on the unmaintained snowmobile trail, fire access roads that many a Jeep, Bronco, and every other off-road enthusiast club have been using for decades. It was actually in a town that my parents have had a summer place for my whole life. So I've spent literally decades watching people tow Jeeps in and out of this place. Like we're talking the ones that aren't road legal with the oversized tires, missing most of their panels and whatnot, because there's a huge variety of different trails. So the
Mhm.
point was nothing new was being shown, but Jeep wanted to show what the Wrangler and the Gladiator can do because they are like their off-road cars or
Mhm.
vehicles. I mean, every Jeep's trail rated and they all can off-road, but these are the two that like, as they call it, what do they call it? Old school off-road authentic with its dual solid axles and whatnot. So you and I have been on many events and we've off-roaded on many events, and depending on the vehicle, sometimes it's laughable when you're on like a dirt road with a little bump because that's all the
Yep.
vehicle can do. And other times it's been better. I mean, Land Rover and Jeep have been good. This is the first time outside of a tire company who don't seem to mind breaking things, where an OEM was like, "We are gonna off road," and I focused on the Gladiator because it's the one you and I have both driven a lot. I've driven 3 times recently, and every time I say like, "This is a Wrangler with a pickup," and it's going to be probably the most capable pickup off road in its class,
Yep.
but with its super long wheelbase and super long overhang, is it still that great? And basically what I found is, yeah, when you're traversing higher obstacles, the Wrangler sometimes bounds over, especially the two-door, which is hilarious what it can do.
Yeah.
This will bottom out, and it has skid plates everywhere, and it makes a horrible noise when you hit your skid plate and start scraping along it. But Jeep was like, no, that's what they're there for. Like, drag it. And when you think it's beached, it's crazy how the four tires can literally just crawl and drag itself off these obstacles. And when you smash the rear end on things on departure angles, it's usually the hitch. And again, it makes a noise, but the amount of abuse these things took, and they all came out unscathed. In fact, the only one that kind of got a rocker panel a little bent, which he's had the upgraded panels that can be easily replaced, was the 4xe. And it was actually probably having the biggest struggle because it has so much weight. It has to pull up and down the obstacles. And when it bounces, it bounces because you got over 5,000 pounds. But yeah, I mean, go on AutoGuide and read the article. Like I said, this is probably the second most hardcore off-roading I've ever done. And it was in pure stock vehicles. The other one, we had modified Land Rovers that were like beyond their extract mode and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's not good for Jeep because they've now shown me where these trails are that I always knew existed, and they showed me what their vehicles can do. And there's some cool lakes that are like no one goes to that are probably full of fish waiting to be fished. So yeah, next time I book a Wrangler, I might have to recreate this event.
Yeah, and then you're gonna start your own side hustle of I don't know, Schleich Fishes. I don't know. I got to work on the title. I also just want to point out for people who aren't watching, Mike, this is like one of the best pictures I've seen you put out in like I really like this. It's a great lead image. So awesome.
That's with the new camera. Yeah, I took a ton of pictures because me and my partner that were driving, Jill McIntosh, who we had on the show about a month ago, we were both commenting the whole time on how off-roading is probably the worst automotive activity to try to relate to photos. That you're doing this stuff, and then you take a picture, and it's like, that's a dirt hill. And it's like, no, you don't understand what we did. So I was trying so hard to get angles and whatnot to really show, like, this is what we're doing. So I'm glad it came out because I thought this was a nice picture too.
Yeah.
So back to Kyle driving Toyotas.
What do you know? Yes, I drove so this is kind of funny. I drove the 2026 Toyota GR86 Yuzu edition, except I had already driven it back in May. So this is this year's special edition, and the whole point of this trip was to drive GRs on track. However, this was shown at Toyota HQ back in May when the RAV4 revealed, and we also do track drives there, and the Yuzu happened to be in the lineup. So I did one lap then. It barely counted, but I drove this more. There's not a lot for me to add about the 86. I'll keep it short. Mike, you drove the Hakone earlier this year. It's that. It's the same special edition that Toyota's been doing for a few years now, which is take the premium trim, add the performance package, and then add some unique details. In this case, it's bright yellow paint, which they say is a nod to one of the Scion special editions. I can't remember which one. So similar color. Yellow stitching inside. The difference with this one is that there is an optional body kit that looks pretty good. It's very aggressive. And then a quad tip catback exhaust. Those are a package deal. However, Toyota doesn't have pricing for that. So I know how much this car costs without those two additions, which is basically what a Hakone cost. But those probably push the price over $40,000 US.
I didn't get to drive the Hakone, by the way. I just talked about it. I haven't driven an 86 or a BRZ in a while, and now you make me want to get in one. I had the WRX TS, which was the same idea, but it's a WRX. But this is also going to be the series yellow, right? In the US? Or is that different as well?
No, I don't. Well, no, because this year's is a purple thing, right? Or no, this year's is a purple. Excuse me, I swore you drove the green 86 like back in March and the Corolla automatic. Anyway, I thought you did. I definitely remember you.
Haven't. It's been a long year, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
let me look up on our site. GR86.
So I will add. There you go.
I did.
So the interesting thing I will say about this actually that I forgot to mention is, so I thought I drove this third on the track after the Corolla and the Supra, and both of those are more powerful. And the Supra is I really adore how the Supra drives. I thought this would be overshadowed. I thought this being, less power, naturally aspirated on a really hilly course, I didn't think I'd love this, and yet it was fantastic. It's so light and so direct. You have so many options on a racetrack. You can enter a corner however you want. You can pick your own lines, and it's such an easy car to have a conversation with. It was wonderful. I understand the appeal of these things now, especially compared to something like a Miata, which is very compromised.
So yeah, I did drive it at the end of winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember loving it too. That's my brain's obviously off because the Series Yellow, that's the BRZ. It's the twin of this. I knew I saw this car in yellow, but
Well,
it was
I figured that's what you meant. Yeah, yeah. It's like Subaru's is going to be the same but different.
That's sort of what happens with this car always.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to our last story of the week. I mean, there was lots more, but we're running out of time, so we need to save some for our guest. So we finally got the official word of something we had been speculating for a while, that the 718 successor will indeed have a gas engine eventually again.
Yeah. We don't know how. So the current 718s production just ended fairly recently, and it's because of European cybersecurity laws. And Porsche has said that platform, it was too expensive to adjust to make it viable for these new rules. So it's an old platform, so they were going to get rid of it. And then we know that the 718 new model was supposed to be EV only. So the question is, are they modifying the EV platform to accept ICE powertrains, or are they spending the money that they said was too much to keep the old platform and update it? We don't know. That part wasn't confirmed, but all they said is that top models will keep ICE engines. So what that means is probably GT4 equivalent or Spider RS, that sort of thing. And I'm imagining they're keeping those because those are easy money. Every single time they release one, everyone wants to buy them. So
I think even GTS, or maybe they'll go crazy with the new model and they'll actually have like turbo, with like a little turbo, like the 911's sort of entry engine in there, because that would be an easy swap. The thing is, you can't say, well, they're going to take a 911 and just modify the chassis, because the engine goes in a different spot. So that doesn't really work. I mean, if you're going to spend that money, the EV platform, there's probably a way for the same money you could ditch the battery, put a different structure, and put an engine in the back. I mean, there are vehicles that do dual power. It's not unheard of, but it depends when this decision was made, I guess. Like if EV was pretty much done and then they decided, that's going to be hard. But if way back years ago, they kind of thought, you know what, maybe we should start making this dual purpose, then, but yeah, who knows? I don't think they'll modify the old platform, to your point, but what the new one is, who knows?
Yeah. Because it was a 718, this EV platform, I'm wondering if the idea there was to try and mimic a mid-engine car and put a lot of the battery closer to where a mid-engine would keep its actual engine. And then it's like, well, does that make it easier to modify for ICE purposes? It's beyond our pay grades. I'm curious, and I guess that also means that if the top models are going to be ICE, I guess that means that something like the concept car from a few years ago, the Mission R, I think it was. It's like, well, then you're not going to be doing an 1,000 horsepower dual motor 718, are you? You're going to be capping it sub 911 power.
I also feel Porsche's testing the waters here by doing exactly what we've said they are. And if it goes full charger Daytona and they can't move the EVs and the top models are selling well, they have also opened the door, since it can take an engine, that now we can put a smaller whatever engine in if we want, or a hybrid or whatever down the road. So
yeah,
well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes.
I know we're going tight for time. I just want to also add, I'm curious what the base EV is going to be like, because look, if I trust anyone to make a fun driving smaller EV, it's Porsche. So I'm still curious. It's just, look, like, this was going to happen.
If they get a 300 horsepower single motor for the rear, which like SUVs have in spades these days, and a small battery,
it could be a lot of fun. If you can keep the weight well under 4,000 pounds, then you could have something. But we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. All right, so that wraps up the news and reviews for the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. As I said, we're going to take a break, and then Kyle and I will be joined by Greg for our special guest segment. I will have Colum on to talk F1, and then Kyle and I will be back to take a look at what's next.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe worst of all, wait hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? That era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and DIYers. Because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs and trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital, so you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle, plates, and paperwork shipped to your door ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling a ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still owe on your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, still available messages. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups. Buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, and eBay subsidiary.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. We have our special guest joining us. Gary, if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Gary Vasilash. I'm the co-host of Autoline After Hours, a contributor to Awards, and I, of course, run my own site and Substack called Shiny Metal Boxes.
All right, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Known Greg for a long time. We're both jurors on North American Car, Truck, and Utility of the Year Awards, and been doing that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you led into it perfectly. For those listening and not watching, we have Greg joining Kyle and I again, so we got a full house here to talk to Gary. Greg, since you know him the most, I'll let you take it away.
Oh, sure. Gary, why don't we always ask our guests, like, how did you actually get into this business? You know, usually the stories are quite random. Nobody follows a straight path to get here. How did you get into it?
Well, back in the mid-90s, I was the editor of a magazine, a trade magazine based in Detroit, and we covered all durable goods manufacturing, which meant we did agricultural equipment, we did aerospace, we did appliances, we did electronics, and oh, surprise, surprise, we did automotive. And at the time, I decided that being in Detroit and writing a whole lot of stories about the auto industry, that we should simply change the magazine to being an automotive magazine. Now, the owners of the company were in Cincinnati, and they were a little mystified as to why anybody would want to do that. I convinced them to do that. So we completely changed the magazine and called it Automotive Production. The Society of Automotive Engineers saw what we were doing, and they became very interested in it. And we ended up having a partnership with SAE. So suddenly the people in Cincinnati who were like mystified by this whole automotive thing, I'd say, oh, you know, on a can of oil, it says, SAE 10W30. It's like, that's them, and they want to partner with us. So we did that. And so the automotive magazine ran, website continued on, COVID hit, boom, done. So it was a long run, but an interesting one.
Another question for you, since you've been in Detroit, it sounds like, for your entire career.
Sure.
You've seen a lot of makers come and go and cars come and go. What are some very memorable cars that either you got a chance to drive or maybe even owned over the years?
So, okay. So, I mean, the whole issue of vehicles coming and going, I mean, that's certainly an interesting one. It seems to me that part of the problem that Detroit has long had is that not enough cars go. They come, they want to keep them because they want to be able to milk as much as they possibly can out of them. And so if you think about like what companies like Honda or Toyota would do is they would get rid of cars. So if if you guys probably remember, and I'm sure that much of the audience remembers, like the Honda Del Sol. What a wonderful little car that was, right? And they said, "Oh, we've had this for long enough, and it goes away." Or the Solera that Toyota had. Again, it's like, okay, we'll give this a run. It will go away. So, I mean, I look at cars like that, which were really wonderful experiences. And, they realized, okay, now its time is done. Let's shut off the spigot and we will make no more.
Although now we're seeing things like the Prelude come back.
Yeah. We had 3 Preludes, by the way, so that's a vehicle that is warm to the Vasilash household's heart, having that vehicle.
Well, then I have
point.
to ask.
Go ahead, go.
I'm just going to ask Gary for his opinion on the new one, as to what he's seen so far, anyway.
I have not seen enough to be able to have a verdict one way or another. I mean, it is nice to see the nameplate come back. Let's see how they actually deliver. I think Honda's sort of in an interesting situation. I mean, when we heard, what was it, day before yesterday, when the Acura ZDX, and they just suddenly pulled the plug on that after a year. And saying, but wait, next year we'll have a vehicle that will replace it. I think that there's some churn that is going on over there. So let's see the execution of the Prelude before we have any verdict on it.
That's what I've been saying too, because you look at the stats and specs, people are CVT hybrid, but it could drive fantastically. Just before we move on, back to your point about Detroit holding on too long, that's a good thing you brought up, because I don't think a lot of people talk about that. Like, the PT Cruiser is a good example. I think they produced it for 10 years. And after probably 2 years, it was done in the market, but they just kept keeping it around. And Chevy Monte Carlo, like, that probably lasted a decade or two too long. So I fully get your point on, some nameplates just need to go, or segments, and move on to new ones.
And it's funny that for whatever reason, they think that, all we need to do is add a new trim, and somehow this will make it all better and people will suddenly enjoy it. I mean, and if mechanically, if functionally the thing is just not delivering, it doesn't matter how many stickers you put on the damn thing. It is not going to be a better vehicle.
So going back to what you're talking about with the Preludes that you've had, is there anything else that you've owned that you kind of wish you still had to this day?
Yeah, so I had a Civic Si, which I absolutely adored. It was the second generation hatchback. I mean, it was a wonderful car. I never had more fun than driving that car. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So it would be, in the classic hot hatch category. And it seems sort of interesting if you think about it, how that has almost disappeared, with the exception of Toyota rolling out the GR Corollas, which, full credit to them for continuing to want to do performance vehicles, figuring that there are still those who want to drive things that are fun to drive, and not necessarily with an electric motor, which everyone seems to adore right now for reasons that mystify me.
Gary, I'm curious, because it's like, I know your background's so much in like the industry and things too. It's been a wild year, wild decade. Well, do you have any predictions here for the rest of 2025 and into 2026?
Well, I think that for the remainder of 2025, I think what we're going to see in the fourth quarter is that the tariffs are finally going to kick in a way that will be more measurable. And I think going into 26, it's suddenly going to be that the lack of affordability of vehicles that exist right now, with the average transaction prices being over 49 grand, I think that is only going to get worse. So the industry is going to be faced with a problem that you always want to sell more vehicles, right? And you always want to sell more vehicles that are going to give you bigger margins. The problem is going to be is this whole affordability thing, and you're going to be driving more people out of the market. At the same time, you've got the industry that over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years have been investing literally billions of dollars on electric vehicles. And whether this is building battery plants or building assembly plants or retooling assembly plants to build EVs. And as of next week, when the $7,500 tax credit goes away, when all the leasing loopholes go away, suddenly they're going to find themselves in a situation where there's going to be a bunch of stranded capital because they're going to have all of this capability and very few people buying the product. And that is going to really, really be an issue for them. And then the third thing that we can think about is, okay, it wasn't all that long ago that General Motors pulled the plug on Cruise automation, saying, we're probably not going to have this robo-taxi business that's going to be making us billions of dollars a year by 2030. And now they're putting their foot back into it. You've got Waymo, certainly you've got Tesla, are more aggressively getting into that space. You've got Zoox, that the Amazon-backed company. So again, the question is, will the car companies spend more money on automation, or will the car companies keep their hand in, sort of? So 26 should be very interesting to see what will happen with autonomy. But I think that the whole issue of the collapse of the EV market, which I'm sure is going to be happening, and the whole issue of what happens when people can't afford to buy cars will be the big headlines of 26.
Do you think you'll see more vehicle models being paused for importation or even production in the US? We're seeing it up in Canada with some US made vehicles are already not going to offer in our market for the time being because it doesn't make sense to import them.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a whole mix of this. I think we're going to see that there's going to be, a situation where there will be programs canceled. We're going to see a situation where there's going to be a pause, which will last for an undefined period of time, which is probably going to be longer rather than shorter. I think we're going to see a reduced mix in terms of the existing models, the availability. You're going to see a lot higher trim levels. You're going to see very few base entry level models, because they're going to add stuff and say, oh, we didn't raise our prices so much. You're just getting more for your money, which of course is a fiction. In terms of, bringing cars in, it's this whole thing is hitting companies like Volkswagen very hard, right? Volkswagen makes a lot of its production for the U.S. market in Mexico, right? And so what is going to happen with the USMCA? The issue becomes like, okay, are they going to sell fewer BMWs that are made in Germany in the U.S.? Probably not, because the people who want to buy a BMW can probably eat the 15% tariff that is on those vehicles. But if you have a lower cost vehicle, that probably isn't going to come, or at least not come in as big numbers as it once did. And there's some discussion that the car companies will take the assembly plants and build cars just for the market. So the Canadian market will have Canadian-built vehicles, the U.S. market will have U.S.-built vehicles, and then Mexico will have Mexican-built vehicles, which, as you guys know, that isn't the way the industry works. I mean, the industry needs to have, flow of things back and forth across borders, just in order to make a profitable business of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this idea that I mean, I'm simplifying, but not really. Where people think, oh well, production facilities that exist in Mexico or in Canada, they'll just drop them in the U.S. to produce them in the U.S. and then it'll be fine. It's like the billions of dollars required and the years of development to put production facilities in the U.S. are longer than political
Sure.
stages, and so it's a really awkward time, and a lot of OEMs don't tend to want to answer questions about this sort of thing.
Well, I mean, to be fair to them, I mean, part of it is they're still trying to figure this all out, right? I mean, they don't know. I mean, it seems like, from one day to another, things are shifting or deals are being announced, but they really haven't been signed yet. So is this truly a deal, or is this just, something that sounds good, right? I mean, I think a big, an interesting thing of, talking about production is whether, there have been some reports that in Canada that BYD may start importing vehicles. And as we know, in the US, I mean, there is 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. I mean, there's just no way in hell that anybody can afford to bring in cars with that sort of a tariff. But then what happens if Canada decides, well, gee whiz, maybe we should have a BYD plant here because why not? And then the people who are south of the border are going to say, wow, look at those great BYD cars that cost 15 grand and they've got like everything. They're going to want them here. Then what happens? You remember it was last year before, when Elon Musk was talking about how, that the Chinese auto industry would just basically annihilate, the legacy automakers as we know them because of, their efficiencies and capabilities and scale. So what happens in Canada is going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, to your point, they're reviewing the tariff right now because we too do have 100% tariff on Chinese vehicles, but our government is looking at potentially not just adjusting it, but scrapping it, which would open the floodgates.
Right.
But everything you're saying is sort of what obviously all of us in the industry are seeing. And it's these tariffs aren't creating, as Kyle said, let's move all production to the US. It seems everyone's just kind of like sitting back and waiting for a couple years to see how it all plays out. Because like Kyle said, if you invest now, it could be 5 years till things are done. And in 3 years, everything could be scrapped and changed. So I think it's what you've said from the start, Gary. It's consumers who are going to ultimately see the prices go up enough to figure out what they're going to do going forward.
Right. And you think about it. I mean, we look at the auto industry and we sort of think that that's the end all and be all. But I mean, the cost of other things will be increasing more and more as time goes on, which then means there's less disposable income to be able to spend on, big ticket items like cars. And, that has to be taken into account. I don't envy some of these CEOs of the car companies because they're just, playing a dark game in the dark.
So Gary, I'm kind of curious, before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, where are you at with like the field that is NACTOY? I've seen a few different predictions and some other podcasts and things out there. I think some people have done some articles. I mean, I say this every year. It seems like it's a good field, but it's like the utility category is just enormous, as you would expect. Cars is smaller, but there's some good stuff in there. I don't know. Truck is, about what you would expect for truck, small but mighty. So I don't know. Where are you at with this whole thing? Because frankly, I'm completely having an open mind, which I think is a good thing, as the calendar about to turn to October. But I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, okay, so one of the things that I've been doing this year is I was one of the judges for the Ward's 10 Best Interiors and UX, and for the recently completed Ward's 10 Best Engines and Propulsion Systems. So I've had we drove, I don't know, it was like 30 some vehicles for each of these awards. And so, I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of the vehicles that are on the list for NACTOY. One thing that you can't help but conclude is that the competition this year, in many regards, is perhaps even more fierce than it has been in previous years that we've done this. I just I wonder a little bit, when I think of some of the vehicles like, the Cadillac IQ, which is a massive, impressive, EV. Does the jury, so again, NACTOY is focused on consumers. NACTOY is focused on, providing information that people can feel reliably comfortable knowing that there were 50 journalists from all over the place making this decision. Whether the whole issue of what happens when EVs are not as popular, does that then give an advantage to something that is non-electrified? So it's a real quandary, I think. But yeah, I mean, on the utility list, from the Acura ADX to the Volvo EX30. So there's a lot to choose from. Where are you coming down, Greg?
I don't know. I've been fortunate to drive a lot of these, so I think that always helps, because you can always see some surprises. I tend to think it'll be harder for car and truck because it's a small field, so the decision's a little bit tougher. You have to be more precise. I'll be intrigued to, try the Charger again, the CLA, the Mercedes. A little surprised that actually made the cut, but I think that'll be kind of interesting to get in there. Kia is always very strong. The utility ones, this literally is making me think I need to make a few calls to the fleets, because there's just so many utility vehicles that even if you go to the test drive in October, you can't possibly drive all these things. So I need to get some of these sent to my house here. Talk about first world problems, but I think for me, the utility one is probably going to be the biggest challenge, because car companies are spending so much money, obviously, in that segment that, I think that'll be tricky. And, frankly, some of these things will also cancel each other out, like there's 3 Cadillacs on here, there's 2 Hyundais, there's 2 Toyotas. So I think just by kind of some natural attrition, we'll be able to narrow it down. And we'll see. But it's a fun time of year for driving these cars.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is, the Honda Prelude that we started at the top with. I mean, that's on the list. I mean,
Yep.
I will be very interested to see whether they actually get one for us to be able to drive. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, the Jeep Cherokee being on the list.
Yep.
Everything you read about the Jeep Cherokee is going to save the company. We'll be interested to see if that actually occurs, since they need some help over there in Auburn Hills with regarding to the Jeep market, which it's not doing so well. That's going to be interesting to see. But some of these, I mean, that the Lucid Gravity, what an interesting car that was to drive.
Yeah.
I mean, I just really thought that was interesting. One of the things that occurred to me about that car, just to sort of digress a little bit, is the fact that, maybe you guys know this, but the windshield goes up and it becomes the sunroof. And I recently had a stone chip on my car, and I had to take the windshield in to get repaired. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, what would it cost if you got a chip in the windshield of a Lucid Gravity? I mean, you're this massive piece of glass. I mean, what does that have to cost? But of course, you're buying $100,000 vehicle. You probably don't care that much.
Probably. Yeah. You're leasing it. You're handing it back after 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But
You hope.
just to add to what you guys are talking about, because Mike and I are just about to do voting for Canadian Car of the Year. Our categories are similar, except we split out the EVs, and I think in a way that makes it easier for us because just before we started recording, Gary, you mentioned that you have the new Palisade in your driveway, and for me, that's already a front runner for the SUVs because it's so impressive. But you also have to put it up against the Ioniq 9, which is very impressive, but an EV. And as we've talked, with the market changing, does that impact how important that model is? Whereas for us, it's Ioniq 9 is its own category, so it doesn't have to have any infighting.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely a consideration that has to be made. But then again, going back to the issue of, okay, if you're judging this just basically, on the technology or on the interior, as we did for the awards thing, then that's sort of easy to do. I look at this, that we do, of course, as Greg mentioned, the Ioniq 9, Palisade, both on the list. I mean, I would look at it from the point of view of, okay, if you were recommending someone to buy this for themselves, what would you do? And yeah, that Ioniq 9 interior is just a knockout. The Ioniq 9's got a great range, but you know what? This Palisade is just frighteningly impressive. I mean, I just wonder what product planners at other companies do if they get the opportunity to get into a vehicle like that. I mean, they've just got to be, heads got to explode, because again, this is not a Genesis, this is a Hyundai, right? I mean, it's just crazy good. So I guess I'm more toward the Palisade than I am for the Ioniq 9. So
I think I've noticed. Go ahead. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, I've noticed that Hyundais tend to do very well historically in a lot of the different awards, throughout North America, just because like the interiors are so good for the price points. And then you put in this design and people tend to vote for them, it seems like, quite often. So, we'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
see,
have
the
to
thing that I
see
wonder-
how. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, to the point of, Greg, you're mentioning, the design. The thing that I wonder about it is that, okay, how is it that they are able to do that, and Kia as well, and yet if you look at Ford and General Motors and Stellantis, they don't do that, and it's just like, why? I mean, don't they see how those two brands are just growing in the market while these other guys are just like fighting it out to try to maintain position? It's just like, design sells. I mean,
It's funny. I recommend Hyundais and Kias to people all the time, and it's a little of a tougher sell in Michigan, probably similarly in Toronto too. People are like, well, I don't know if I want to buy a Hyundai. And it's like, well, look at it. Why wouldn't you do that? So I do think Chevy, to be fair, in particular, has gotten their design way up in the last probably 5 years, particularly with their EVs and things. And they've actually scored some points in some of these awards too, but it's not universal.
No. Yeah, the Optic and Vistic interiors are incredible.
Yeah.
I the Optic, I just, that is in my mind the first modern Cadillac of the last millennium. I mean, it's just like it's just very surprising to me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what wins the various awards in the different regions. Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't, but we won't know for months still. But Gary, we thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
Like you said, 2026 is going to be an interesting year, and we'll definitely have you back on to maybe recap in a year's time what did or didn't happen from what we thought, and get ready for the 2027 Car of the Year awards, I guess.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary.
Now. Hello and welcome back. We have Colum joining us once again for some Formula One news and rumors. What's going on this week?
There's a crazy amount. I don't think we're actually going to be able to get on top of it all, but I figured maybe we should start off with a little Baku discussion, because that was, I think, a very wild and surprising weekend on pretty much every level, like the most red flags ever in a qualifying.
Yeah.
Whole thing was nuts. And I have to say, I saw this weird statistic and I or just tweet, and I thought I would share it. There's like, who would have believed at the start of the year that we would see a Carlos Sainz Williams podium before we saw a Hamilton Ferrari podium? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Like you can just add them to the list of unexpected podiums. We've had a Kick Sauber, a Williams, but no Hamilton.
yeah. I think I saw something actually that Haas is the only team on the grid with no podiums like ever. So that's pretty sad for Haas. So
Like this year?
no. Have they ever been on a podium? I don't think so. No, I think it was ever.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
that's-
My hot take on Baku is maybe it's unpopular opinion, but I think without the red flags and Piastri, just I don't know what was wrong with him. I was like,
Yeah.
in a fight with his girlfriend or something.
Well, they never really said in the end if it was because like I saw a lot of people online saying, oh, it was like a mechanical failure in that first lap crash, and I would believe that too, but nobody ever confirmed that. So sorry, you were saying.
I was just gonna say, without all that, it was a very boring race. Like nothing happened in the race hardly. It was all the drama of how the field got shuffled because of this crazy qualifying session, and then Piastri knocking himself out. But I mean, like the people he thought would charge to the front, like Norris, never did.
That
Sainz,
was shocking.
Yeah, Sainz hung on, and Verstappen just dominated. It was like, yeah, I think I like fast forwarded like 20 laps of the race because like, well, this is going nowhere.
Yeah, we got all the excitement happened in qualifying. It was like a Monaco, right? Where and yeah, there was a lot of like DRS trains. You never, it's true. It was a bizarre result, and I'm curious if I guess they're saying Singapore will be the test. Like everyone's saying that like Red Bull's figured this out now with this new floor and blah blah blah. But Red Bull has kind of I think what I've read is that they're basically saying, look, both Monza and Baku are very specific types of circuits. They're not usual circuits, and so and Red Bull I think is pretty traditionally done well in recent memory anyway, pretty terrible at Singapore. So if they can do well at Singapore, they're in good shape, but otherwise, no. So, yeah, I mean, it's a surprise since the summer break. We've come back. The whole season has turned. I feel like it's, I feel like McLaren's probably got it locked down, but anything can happen in Formula One. So.
Yeah, like no one's catching the constructors. I mean, no matter Max could win every race, but he needs his teammate to do it with him, and that's not happening. Max could maybe get second.
Yeah.
Lando could maybe get first. I mean, that's still up in the air, but you're right. Like the Monaco and whatnot, Red Bull just dumped their downforce because the way their car can operate otherwise, and no one could pass them. But you can't do that on some upcoming track. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It should be good. It was bizarre as anything. I'll put that out there. Like it was such a strange race. I was hoping for Lawson to get a podium too, right? But that just didn't happen. That would have been nice. But it was still his best ever result. So good for him.
Right down to Carlos and Charles renting a white van to drive across Europe to get home.
That was great. I'm glad you sent me that when you sent me that note being like, hey, we should talk about this. I'm like, talk about what? And then if people haven't seen it, yes, there's that. You tell it, Mike, the video.
Well, their plane got diverted because of weather, and they landed somewhere in Italy, and they had 500K to get back to Monaco. So rather than spend the night or wait, they rented basically a commercial van, like a rental commercial van, and drove all through the night back home. There's a second video that came out of them actually picking it up, and Carla's like pointing at the van they're getting, and like it is like your 2-window big van.
I love that they're just in that sense just dudes. Like that's what like you and I would do if we got like stuck somewhere. We really need to be back from we had to be in Toronto, and it's like, oh, the plane broke down in Chicago. We're like, well, crap. We can't wait. We just got to go. We got a meeting in the morning. We're going to drive all night and get there or something. So that's funny.
And I'm sure whoever was at the rental desk had quite the story to tell when, late at night, these two wander up and say, can we get a rent a vehicle?
I bet they did. And you're like, I know you. Or they totally didn't know who they were at all. And I suspect in that part of the world, they would definitely be recognized.
I was going to say, I would find it hard to believe someone working within any sort of car facet in Italy wouldn't know who those two were, but
yeah, they'd be
especially
fired.
being a Ferrari and former Ferrari driver.
Absolutely, yeah. So moving on. Sorry, the interesting news. So there's two things. There's all kinds of like testing going on right now. So I guess there's at Mugello today. As we speak, Haas is doing a bunch of testing. And there's two things. So one is that I guess the picture you've got up now is James Hinchcliffe is actually, I guess he's getting his first ever chance to drive a Formula One car. So people who don't know, Hinchcliffe was an IndyCar racer turned commentator. It's funny how like him and Will Buxton have like sort of semi-swapped careers. Not really, because Will Buxton wasn't a Formula One driver, but now he does a lot of the commentary for Formula One, and he's getting this great chance. So I'll be really curious to see the video. Like they're shooting a whole thing, I think, for Sky. So I'll be very curious to see what they produce, because I'd love to see someone who's had a whole solid IndyCar career, who's still reasonably athletic. Like he's maybe not a peak Formula One driver, but who can certainly put in some real solid lap times, what he thinks and feels about it all. I think that'd be cool to see. So
yeah, someone told me about this yesterday. Like, did you hear he's getting a tryout with Haas? And I was like, what? Like, he's a little old to be doing this. And then it's for a show, and I was like, okay, this makes more sense.
Yeah, it does. So there's that, and then that during that same test, it wasn't Mercedes who was supposed to. Mercedes was supposed to give Grosjean a ride in a Formula One car, if you recall. Toto Wolff promised that. It never happened, and so Haas has finally come through, and Grosjean is now today, as we speak, behind the wheel. I think it's actually already over. Has tested the an older Haas car and gotten some laps in, wearing a helmet that his kids had designed and everything too. So that's a nice heartwarming story to finally see him back there. I don't even know what Grosjean's doing anymore. He was in IndyCar for a while, but I'm not sure if he still is. So I don't think so.
Yeah, he was in IndyCar for a while. So yeah, that's interesting too. I don't think they're looking to replace anyone at the team with him, but like going back again, that is odd. But maybe it's just one of those.
I think it's just
PR
good.
thing.
It's good publicity. I will add, as I'm, one of my dog with a bone things I'm after here is that in the midst of all this PR that they're churning out about, Hinchcliffe and Grosjean, there's also Ryo Hirakawa, who's their reserve driver, who's this Toyota Formula driver. They are making some content and talking about the partnership with GR Racing and stuff like that. And so, Toyota continues to get involved in. You can see the logo right on Hinchcliffe's chest there. Toyota's continue to get involved in Formula One. So I'm waiting for the bigger announcement every day. So it will come soon, but.
This test too is set up through Toyota. That Grosjean's there. Like that's the whole connection as to why he's getting this. So yeah, it's more and more looking like maybe they're thinking when Berryman ultimately ditches us for another series, maybe we'll do Grosjean's and our own homegrown driver. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on because we're running out of time here.
You like this picture? Here, those who can't see that, this is like Charles Leclerc is like a Ferrari Iron Man. And this is what AI generated when I asked for a Charles Leclerc Ferrari super soldier. So the story here, and this is kind of weird, is that there's a company, and hold on, I'm going to make sure I get the name of it right, called Focuscom. And Focuscom makes these like wearable headsets that like track your brain waves when you do exercising and training, and it's supposed to make you a better athlete. So the parent company is called BrainCo, and apparently BrainCo has links to the Chinese government. And there's a recent article I came across. There's one in Newsweek recently, basically talking about how this company has links to the Chinese government, and this company is also tied to getting data to help train Chinese super soldiers. So apparently Charles Leclerc's data, there was like a data breach with the company too. Whatever it is, it's sort of the joke. I mean, it's not super serious, but that they're using Charles Leclerc's brain waves to make Chinese super soldiers. So if in the future China attacks us and the soldiers run into things and scream that they are so stupid, we will know why. So.
Yeah, it wasn't on my bingo card for this year, but this season's proven anything can happen. So.
This story was too weird to not touch. I was like, this is probably mostly nonsense, but it looks like it's like it's legit. It's just that he's just one of the people, right? Like, I'm not sure they're after his data, but in doing some more research, it looks like there's a bunch of like elite athletes, some like tennis players and stuff like that who all use this device. So who knows? Who knows if it means anything? Maybe they have all the brainwave data and it's, whatever that form of data is total garbage. So it could just be more of a joke than anything else. So.
Well, we did have more stories, but we've run out of time, so we need to move on. But thank you for joining us. We'll have you back next week and back in action. And it's crazy that it feels like the season should just about be wrapped up, but there's still months of racing. It's such a long year.
So many other seasons basically are, right? So much of other motorsports are like, oh, well, this is the end. And I'm thrilled by it. I know it's kind of a pain for the drivers and everybody else, but man, I love having my Formula One to watch, because those January, February weekends when you're like, well, what do I do now? So other than watch like the 24 Hours of Daytona, that's always a good January highlight or something. So thanks for having me, Mike.
Very short off season is going to be chaos this year, so I'm looking forward to that too.
It will. It'll be great.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care, Mike. Bye.
Okay, so that just about wraps things up. We'll quickly cover what we've been up to this week, because Kyle, you and I were each on a trip. We talked about mine briefly, or not briefly. We talked about mine. I was driving the Jeeps off-road after a monsoon, which is kind of fun. Where were you, Kyle?
I was also off-roading, although not after a monsoon. I was back in California for the third time in 3 weeks, off-roading the 2026 Chevrolet Silverado EV Trail Boss. Big numbers. I mean, we know this, right? All the Chevy EV trucks, everything about them is big. So this is the new range topper. We drove the RST a few months ago. RST's gone. Now it's Trail Boss. And so you get the same basic package, which is a big battery pack, something like 478 miles of range, or 760-ish kilometers, 725 horsepower, 775 pound-feet of torque. But now you get 35-inch all-terrains, a 2-inch suspension lift, a new terrain drive mode. And it's very accomplished off-road. And the trail that we took, while not as hardcore as what you drove, it showed off a fair amount of its capability. And I just realized I'm basically talking about the whole thing, which I will save for next week. And then, Mike, we've got some other vehicles that we're gonna pair off together over the weekend.
Yeah, just quickly before we get to that, it's funny how the RST, I didn't know the RST was dying for the Trail Boss, but that was sort of like, hey, look, sport truck, performance truck, and Ford named their electric one the Lightning, and then in the same year RST dies for Trail Boss and Ford dumps their low trim for the STX to be more off-roady. So does this mean the Hummer had it right from the start, that people wanted off-road EV trucks? But anyway,
maybe.
So speaking of EVs, we are comparing probably, if not the two best 3-row EVs on sale, partially because there isn't that many, but the EV9 Kia, which we've liked for a while, and then its corporate sibling, the Hyundai Ioniq 9. And we won't get into impressions. We'll save that for down the road. But it's usual Kia Hyundai, same basic bones, completely different products. So it's been interesting. And then next week, I am sticking to the EV theme, and I am actually going with a high-performance EV. I have the Chevrolet Blazer EV SS, which it's been years since I first saw this, and when it was debuted and heard about it and thought like, this, I got to try this with its crazy big tires and crazy power. Since then, everything seems to have the same kind of power, but I'm finally getting behind the wheel, so I'm looking forward to trying it. What about you, Kyle?
Nice. I'm going simple. I'm getting into the 2026 Honda Civic Si, which I'm honestly super stoked about. I was supposed to drive an Si earlier this year when I was in California, and I got upgraded to a Type R, which I'm very, very happy about. But I wanted to see what the Si is like, because it remains one of the few affordable manual 4-doors out there. So it's my kind of car.
Because it's in Canada, it can get summer tires as an option. Do you know if this one will have it now? Because remember when I last drove one, it was all seasons only.
Yeah, you know what? I do not know. I will have to check on Monday when I pick it up if it has them or not, since I'm picking it up, still in September, just barely.
The The reason I ask is because I drove the SI25 with the Firestone summer tires installed as part of their trip through the Trail of Dragon, and it's incredible how much just that set of tires transforms that car. Like everything you like about it is amplified, and the things that you're like, are gone. So yeah, hopefully you got some sticky tires.
Here's hoping.
All right, well, that wraps things up on the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. As we said, we'll have lots more next week and more special guests. Until then, we will see you later.
So long, everybody.
eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. Ever try to buy your car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on blind trust? That era is over. Now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary.